The city of Vethara had been abandoned for 40 years before Cora Ashveld made it her stronghold, and in those 40 years it had made its opinion of abandonment very clear. The eastern gatehouse had lost its roof to a winter collapse. The great hall's floor had buckled where tree roots had found the foundations and disagreed with them philosophically. 3 of the 7 towers still stood at full height. 2 stood at partial height. 1 stood at an angle that suggested it had given up on the concept of vertical and was simply waiting for permission to finish falling. Cora had taken one look at all of it and said, usable. Her lieutenants had taken one look at all of it and said nothing, because her lieutenants were experienced enough to know when a decision had already been made. That had been 8 months ago. In 8 months, her warband of 400 had settled into Vethara's bones like water settling into stone, slowly, with pressure, finding every crack and filling it with something that intended to stay. They had cleared the great hall of debris and hung their banners from the remaining rafters. They had repaired the eastern gatehouse with timber from the collapsed roof itself, which Cora had described as efficient, and her lieutenant Dravan had described as cursed, and both of them had been partially right. They had learned which towers were safe to climb, and which were safe to observe from a distance, and which were best ignored entirely, and referred to only as the problem in the northeast corner. What they had not managed in 8 months was the gate. The main gate of Vethara was an engineering achievement from a previous century. 2 massive iron-banded oak doors, each 12 feet tall and 4 feet wide, hung on hinges designed to last 1,000 years. They had lasted 430, which was respectable, and then the hinge mechanism on the left door had failed in a way that was not immediately obvious, and was only revealed when someone tried to close it and the door dropped 2 inches, sheared 3 of its iron bands, and jammed against the stone threshold in a position that was neither open nor closed, but some stubborn intermediate position that served the purpose of neither. Cora's people had looked at it. Her lieutenants had looked at it. A self-described craftsman from the warband had looked at it, announced it was complicated, and gone to do something else. The door had remained in its intermediate position for 8 months, letting in the wind and the rain and the particular draft that found the back of Cora's neck at every meal, and reminded her of the things she had not yet solved. The prisoner arrived on a Tuesday in the thin rain of early autumn. He was not the prisoner she had intended to take. The village of Millhaven sat 12 miles south of Vethara at the edge of the contested border zone. Contested meaning that 3 different factions had claimed it in the last decade, and none of them had managed to hold it, which had given Millhaven's residents a pragmatic attitude toward authority and a very good root cellar for waiting things out. Cora had sent Dravan to collect a hostage. Specifically, she had sent Dravan to collect the village headman's eldest son, who was 19, allegedly skilled with numbers, and useful as leverage in the ongoing negotiation with the Southern Trade Consortium that Cora was trying to conclude without starting another war. Dravan had returned with a different person entirely, a circumstance he explained with the single sentence. The headman's son was gone, and this one was there. This one was standing in the middle of the great hall, with his hands bound behind him and rein on his shoulders, looking around at the ceiling with the expression of a man who has just been handed a problem he didn't ask for, but is already thinking about how to solve it. He was perhaps 35, medium height, broad in the shoulders in the way of men who work with their hands rather than the way of men who train for war, the difference being in where the muscles sat and how the body moved, and this man moved like someone accustomed to lifting things rather than fighting them. Brown hair, dark with rain, a face that had spent time outdoors and showed it, weathered at the corners of the eyes, a scar along the jaw from something that had happened a long time ago. His hands, even bound, looked like the hands of someone whose hands were their primary tool, calloused across the palms, scarred at the knuckles, 2 fingers on the left hand, slightly crooked from an old break. He was looking at the ceiling, specifically at the place where 2 of the hall's main crossbeams had shifted in their joints, creating a gap that let in light and weather and the particular anxiety of anyone who understood load distribution. Cora studied him from the high seat at the end of the hall. "You're looking at my ceiling," she said. He looked at her. His expression did not change into the expression she was used to, the rapid recalibration of fear, the performance of deference, the calculation of what she wanted to see. He simply looked at her the way he had looked at the ceiling, with the focused attention of someone assessing something that needed assessing. "The northeast crossbeam is pulling," he said. "You've got movement in the joint. If you don't pin it before the first hard freeze, the expansion will open it another inch, and then you'll have a structural problem instead of a maintenance one." Cora looked at him for a long moment. "You're my prisoner," she said. "I'm aware," he said. "The beam is still pulling." His name was Emmerich Voss. He was a carpenter by trade and a joiner by preference, which he explained was a distinction that mattered to him, even if it meant nothing to anyone else. He had been in Millhaven for 3 weeks repairing the mill wheel, which was finished, and the granary doors, which were almost finished, and the headman's kitchen table, which had been finished and then sat on by the headman's second cousin and had become unfinished again. He had not, he said, been planning to be in Millhaven when soldiers arrived. He had been planning to finish the table and move on to the next commission. "And now?" Cora said. "And now I'm here," Emmerich said, with the tone of a man updating his understanding of a situation rather than complaining about it. "What do you want with me?" "I wanted the headman's son. He left last week. Family matter, I heard." He paused. "I'm not leverage for anything. I'm not from Millhaven. I don't have family that can be threatened. I'm a carpenter from a town 3 days east, and the only thing I'm owed there is the remainder of a payment for a set of window shutters." Cora looked at him. He looked back. "So releasing me cost you nothing," he said, "and keeping me cost you food." "It also costs me the appearance of decisiveness," Cora said. "My lieutenants watched me send for a hostage. Returning empty-handed has a price." Emmerich considered this with what appeared to be genuine thoughtfulness. "How long would you need to keep me for that to be satisfied?" "That's an unusual question for a prisoner to ask." "I'm trying to understand the actual problem," he said. "The actual problem isn't me. The actual problem is your lieutenant's perception of your authority. Those are different problems with different solutions." Cora had been fighting wars for 23 years. She had negotiated with kings and clan chiefs and merchant lords and 3 different varieties of religious fanatic. She had never had a prisoner attempt to help her solve the political situation created by his own capture. "You're not afraid," she said. "I'm fairly frightened," Emmerich said. "But being frightened doesn't help with the beam." She kept him, not for leverage. That pretense lasted about 2 days before it became too thin to maintain even internally. She kept him because on his first morning in the cell they had put him in, which was a former storage room with a barred window and a door that no longer hung quite true in its frame, he had spent 4 hours studying the door and then asked to speak to whoever was in charge of the building. Dravon had brought him to Cora. "The door on my cell," Emmerich said. "What about it? It doesn't hang right. The top hinge is pulled from the frame. The stone around it has cracked and the anchor bolts have shifted. Another month and it won't close at all." Cora looked at Dravon. Dravon looked at the middle distance. "Why are you telling me this?" Cora said. "It's your cell. A door that doesn't close properly is useful to a prisoner." "I can't sleep when things are wrong," Emmerich said. "It bothers me. A loose hinge bothers you. Most things that are broken and could be fixed bother me," he said. "It's a professional liability." He paused. "Also, if I'm going to be here for a while, I'd rather the cell have a functioning door. It's drafty." Cora looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, "Where do we keep the tools?" She had not intended it to become what it became. She had given him access to the tools, supervised, with 2 guards who were under instructions to watch his hands at all times, because the door was, in fact, drafty, and because there was something in his manner that she could not identify as threat. He repaired the cell door in 2 hours. He did it with the focused quietness of someone doing the thing they were made to do, making small sounds under his breath that were not words exactly, but something adjacent to words, the private language of a person working. When he was done, he asked about the beam. "You don't have to," she said. "I know," he said. "It's still pulling." She took him to see it. He spent an hour underneath it with his head tilted back, pressing his hand against the wood in various places, making the sounds again. Then he said he needed iron pins, a boring iron, a mallet, and someone to hold the brace while he worked at height. "You could fall," said one of the guards, whose name was Yenna, and who had appointed herself Emmerich's primary observer, with an attention that Dravon had privately noted to Cora. "I could," Emmerich agreed, "but the beam is more likely to fall, eventually, and it'll take more of the ceiling with it." He fixed the beam in a day and a half. It required going up twice, the second time to drive the pins after the brace had been set, and when he came down the second time, his hands were shaking slightly from the height and the effort, and Yenna handed him water with an expression she appeared unaware of. Cora watched this from across the hall and thought, this is going to be complicated. She spoke to him again that evening. Not in the formal setting of the high seat. She went to the courtyard where he was sitting on a block of fallen stone, eating his meal with the appetite of someone who had done a day's work, looking at the gatehouse. She sat across from him on a different block of stone, which seemed to surprise him slightly. The gate, she said, not a question. The left door, he said. The hinge failed, the mechanism, not the iron itself. The iron is probably salvageable. It needs to be taken down, the mechanism rebuilt and rehung. He ate a piece of bread. It's several days of work, maybe a week if the mechanism is worse than it looks from here. Can you do it? He looked at her. Is that a question or an offer? Both. He looked back at the gate. I'd need help for the hanging. The door weighs, I'd estimate 400 pounds, maybe more. You can't hang something that heavy with 2 people. I have 400 people. You have 400 soldiers, he said. How many of them know which end of a chisel does the work? Cora almost said something. Then she did not say it. Then, because the evening was cold and there was something in the conversation that she did not want to end, she said, 3, maybe 4. That's enough, Emmerich said. If they'll take instruction. They'll take instruction from me, Cora said. Whether they'll take it from a human prisoner carpenter is a different question. He looked at her. Something in his face, not amusement, but the cousin of it. That's a fair point, he said. What would make them take it? If I told them to, then tell them to. Cora looked at him for a moment. He had finished his bread and was now looking at the gate again with the same focused assessment he gave everything. Not casual, not careless. The look of a man who was always slightly more present in the world than the world expected. What do you get from this? She said. Fixing my gate. My ceiling, my cell door. You're a prisoner. You could do nothing and wait. I could, he said. But there's a broken gate and I know how to fix it. And knowing how to fix something and not fixing it is. He stopped. Searched for the word. Uncomfortable, he said finally. Like having a stone in your boot. You could keep walking. But why would you if you could just take it out? Most people, Cora said, would use the stone as an excuse to sit down. Most people aren't carpenters, Emmerich said. The gate took 9 days. It took 9 days because the hinge mechanism was worse than it looked. Not just failed, but corroded through in 2 places, requiring fabrication of new parts from the iron stock Cora's warband had brought with them. Emmerich spent the first 2 days simply taking the door apart, removing the iron bands, extracting the hinge pins, working with 3 of Cora's soldiers, who had been identified as having relevant skills, and who approached the work with the wary attention of people doing something unfamiliar under observation. He was patient with them. That was the thing Cora noticed, watching from a distance with the pretense of reviewing other business with. He explained things once, clearly without condescension. When someone made a mistake, he corrected it without drama. When someone did something right, he simply moved to the next step, which was its own form of acknowledgement, the acknowledgement of competence, which assumed it rather than celebrating its absence. On the 3rd day, the soldier named Breck, who was 22, and had grown up on a farm before joining the warband, and had hands shaped by that history, asked Emmerich why the hinge mechanism had failed the way it did rather than another way. Emmerich explained it. Weight distribution, metal fatigue, the particular stress of a door this size hung without a floor catch. He used a stick in the courtyard dust to draw the forces involved. Breck looked at the diagram and asked another question. Emmerich answered it. By the end of the day, Breck was asking questions that Emmerich answered more slowly, because they were better questions. Cora watched this and thought about her warband, who had been fighting for 3 years and had not built anything in most of that time, and about what it did to people to only destroy. On the 6th day, they re-hung the door. It took most of the day and required, at one point, 11 people working simultaneously, 4 on the hoist, 3 steadying the door, 2 managing the hinge pins, 1 watching the clearance on the threshold, and Emmerich directing all of them in a voice that was neither loud nor quiet, but carried in the way that voices carried when they knew what they were saying. The door went up, the pins seated, the mechanism engaged. Emmerich tested it, slowly through its full arc, watching the clearance, checking the swing. It moved without sound. It settled flush against the frame. He crouched and examined the threshold clearance and stood up and said, "Good." Breck made a sound. The other soldiers made similar sounds. Someone, Cora thought it might have been Yenna, actually said "well done," which was not a thing Yenna said to anyone. Emmerich looked at the door for a moment with the expression she had come to recognize as his version of satisfaction. Not pride exactly, but the specific piece of something being as it should be. Then he looked at Cora across the courtyard. She walked over. "It'll need the iron bands replaced," he said. "The existing ones are workable, but 3 of them are cracked. If you put the door under stress, if someone tries to batter it, or if the frame shifts in a hard frost, the bands will fail before the wood does. Can you do the bands?" "If you have enough iron stock, we have enough." He nodded. "You could have asked for something," Cora said. "For fixing the gate most people would have." "I didn't fix it for something," Emmerich said. "I fixed it because it needed fixing. That's not how bargaining works." "I'm not bargaining," he said. "I'm a prisoner. Prisoners don't bargain from a position that makes bargaining worthwhile." He looked at the door. "I fixed it because it was broken, and I was here and I know how. That's the whole of it." Cora looked at the door. 12 feet of oak and iron, hanging true, closing clean. The mechanism, she had been told by 3 different people, was too far gone to be worth attempting. The city had had a failing gate for 8 months and now it didn't. "The northeast tower," she said. Emmerich turned to look at it, the one that leaned. "The problem in the northeast corner. I'll need to see it from inside," he said. "Tomorrow," Cora said. "Tomorrow," he agreed. She told Dravan that evening that she was keeping the prisoner indefinitely. Dravan, who had been watching the last 9 days with the expression of a man watching a weather system develop, said, "And the Southern Trade Consortium?" Cora said, "We'll negotiate without a hostage." "We have other leverage," Dravan said. "The prisoner fixed the gate." Cora said, "He did." Dravan said, "And the beam and his cell door and the drainage in the eastern courtyard that he apparently noticed and mentioned to Yenna, who mentioned it to the masonry crew." Cora said, "Yes." Dravan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "He's useful." Cora said that was her reasoning. He was useful. That was the complete and entire explanation for keeping a prisoner who had no leverage value and no military significance, and who had spent 9 days making her broken city less broken. Dravan looked at her with the expression of a lieutenant who had served under her for 11 years, and had his own opinions about the complete and entire explanation. He said nothing further. She did not elaborate. The northeast tower took 3 weeks. It took 3 weeks because the lean was worse than it looked from outside. The foundation on the northeast corner had been undermined by water, which had found a crack in the old stone and made itself comfortable over 40 years of nobody watching. Emmerich spent the first week simply understanding it, excavating around the base, mapping where the water had gone, determining which stones were load-bearing and which were facing and could be removed without consequence. He explained all of this to Cora. Not because she asked. She did not ask. She arrived at the tower on the 3rd morning with no stated reason and sat on a block of foundation stone and watched him work. And he began explaining without being prompted, because that was what he did when he was working through a problem. He thought aloud. The aloud just happened to be directed at her. "The water came in here," he said, crouching at the base of the northeast corner, pointing at a fissure in the stone, following this line. "Over time it got under this course of stone. See how it's shifted? Just half an inch, but that's enough. The weight above transferred onto this section here, which is why the tower leans northeast instead of settling evenly." Cora crouched beside him to see what he was pointing at. She was close enough to smell sawdust and rain. "Can it be fixed?" she said. "It can be stabilized, not fixed the way it was. That would require taking the tower down and starting over. But stabilized so it doesn't get worse and reinforced so it can be used safely up to." He tilted his head, calculating. "The 3rd floor. Maybe the 4th if we pin the joints on the stair. What do you need?" he told her. "Stone, lime, iron, time. Hands that would follow instruction. Someone with a good eye for level." "The soldier," he said. "Breck, he has a good eye. Breck is a warrior." "Breck is someone who grew up building things and then stopped," Emmerich said. "He remembers the work. You can see it when he picks up a tool. His hands know what to do before he does." Cora thought about Breck, who had been in her warband for 4 years and who was a competent fighter and who looked, she now noticed, slightly more like himself when he had a chisel in his hand than when he had a sword. "I'll assign him to you," she said. "He'll want to know why," Emmerich said. "He's proud. He won't like being assigned to a prisoner." "What do you suggest?" Emmerich considered. "Tell him the prisoner needs supervision, and Breck is the only one with the relevant knowledge to ensure the work is done correctly. Make it about his expertise, not my need." Cora looked at him. "You're managing my people." "I'm suggesting a way to avoid an unnecessary problem," he said. "You can ignore it." "I won't ignore it," she said. "It's a good suggestion." He looked at her then. The full look, not the assessing look, but the other one, the one she had caught a few times now and not been able to name. She held it. "You have a practical mind," he said. "I lead 400 people," she said. "Practicality is a survival requirement." "It's more than that," he said, and looked back at the foundation stone. "Some people are practical because they have to be. You're practical because you think it's the right way to see things." Cora was quiet for a moment. "My mother said practicality was armor," she said, "that you could wear it and nothing would hurt you. Was she right?" "She was practical about most things and wrong about that one." Cora stood. She brushed stone dust from her knee. "Breck will be assigned to you tomorrow morning." She walked back to the hall. Behind her, she heard him resume the small sounds of working, the private language of a man thinking with his hands. Breck was assigned. The tower work proceeded. It proceeded slowly, the way foundation work proceeded. Carefully, with attention, without the satisfaction of visible daily progress. Emmerich explained this to the 3 soldiers who were working with him, that the work that mattered most was the work that happened below the surface, in the hidden joints and the filled cracks in the redirected water, and that visible progress would come after the invisible work was done. Breck listened to this with the expression of a man hearing something he had always known but never had put into words. On the 7th day of the tower work, Cora arrived to find Emmerich and Breck sitting on the foundation stones eating their midday meal and talking, not about the tower, but about something else. She caught the tail of it. Breck describing a building he had grown up in, a farmhouse, the way his father had built the corner joints, with a specific technique that had let the house survive 3 generations without shifting. Emmerich asking questions. Breck answering them with the animation of someone who had not talked about this in a long time and found the words still there. Cora sat down a few feet away. Neither of them stopped talking. She ate her own meal in the conversation's edge and found it was not uncomfortable. It was, in fact, the most comfortable midday meal she had eaten in 8 months, which was a fact she chose not to examine too closely. After a while, Emmerich said, without looking at her, "The drainage under the east corner is redirected. We won't know for certain until the next rain, but I think the foundation is getting dry now." "Good," Cora said. "The corner will need to be repacked before we can start on the stone course above. That's 2 more days of below-surface work." "Understood." A pause. "There's a building on the south side of the square," Emmerich said. "The one with the collapsed roof. Do you know what it was?" "A counting house, I think. From the old city records, the walls are sound. The roof collapsed because the ridge beam failed. It was undersized for the span, probably always was. If you wanted a roof on it again, it could be done." Cora looked toward the south of the square, where the counting house sat with its walls intact and its interior open to the sky. "Why would I want a roof on it? You have 400 people in one great hall," Emmerich said. "In winter, that's a problem. A second interior space, even a modest one, would distribute the crowding." Cora thought about last winter. She did not enjoy thinking about last winter. "You're planning ahead," she said. "I'm noticing things," he said. "You can decide what to do with them." She looked at the counting house. Then she said, "What would you need?" He had been in Vithara for 6 weeks. When she asked him the question she had been not asking for 6 weeks. They were in the great hall after the evening meal. Most of the warband had gone to their quarters. Cora remained at the long table with her maps and her correspondence, and the particular tiredness that came not from the body, but from carrying decisions. Emmerich was across the hall doing something with a piece of wood and a small knife. Not a weapon, he had explained early on with the patience of a man establishing a fact, just a habit. He thought better when his hands were doing something. She said, "What were you doing before Millhaven?" He looked up. "Working. I move between commissions. There's always work if you're reliable. No fixed place, not in a few years." She looked at her maps. "Why?" A pause. "My workshop was in a town called Sarath, on the southern road." He looked at the piece of wood. "The war came through 3 years ago. Not your war, the one before. Sarath was on the wrong side of the supply line." He said it without weight, the flat tone of something that had been said enough times that the weight had been worn off it. "I left. The work travels with me. The rest didn't." Cora was quiet for a moment. She knew about wars that came through. She knew about things that stayed and things that didn't. "My warband," she said. "We've been fighting for 6 years. This," she indicated Vithara, the city, the attempt at something permanent. "This is the first place we've stopped. Do you intend to stay? I intend to try." She looked at the maps. "Whether it works depends on things I don't fully control." "Most things do," Emmerich said. "That's not comforting." It's not meant to be, he said. It's meant to be accurate. Comfort and accuracy aren't always the same thing. Cora looked at him across the hall. He was watching her now, the full attention again, the look that didn't slide off anything. You could leave, she said. You know that. You're not guarded at night anymore. The gate works. You could be gone before morning. Emmerich looked at his hands. I know. Why haven't you? The piece of wood turned over in his hands. The counting house roof isn't finished, he said. That's not a reason. It's part of a reason. What's the rest of it? He was quiet for a long time. Long enough that she thought he wasn't going to answer. That the question had gone into the space where things went when they were too true to be spoken yet. Then he said, because I left Serath when the war came through, and I have been in motion ever since. And this is the first place in 3 years where I have woken up in the morning and known what I was going to do that day, where the work has been there and the day has had a shape. He turned the wood over again. I don't know what that means, but leaving it is. He stopped. Uncomfortable, he said finally, like a stone in a boot. Cora looked at her maps, the work before her, the decisions, the 400 people whose choices were shaped by her choices. The city around her, less broken than it had been 6 weeks ago, the gate closed and true, the beam pinned, the tower stabilizing in its foundation. There's the south wing of the Great Hall, she said. It was a residence originally. 8 rooms. The doors are gone and 2 of the window frames have failed, and the fireplace in the main room has a crack in the chimney breast that I've been told makes it dangerous to light. Emmerich looked at her. It would be useful, she said, keeping her voice at the register of practicality, to have those rooms habitable before winter. Storage, accommodation, options. That's several weeks of work. I'm aware. The chimney breast alone, I know. He looked at her for a long moment. Something in his face moved through several positions and settled into something that was not quite a smile, but was adjacent to one in the way that the bone bead had been adjacent to prayer. I'll need to see the fireplace first, he said, if the crack runs into the flue. Tomorrow, Cora said. Tomorrow, he agreed. Winter came to Vethara with the particular severity of high country winters, not gradually, not with warning, but with the sudden decision of a door closing. The counting house had its roof by the time the first snow fell. 8 rooms of the south wing were habitable. The northeast tower stood straight enough. Not straight, but straight enough, which Emmerich had explained was a different thing and an acceptable one. The great hall's beam sat in its pins without movement. The gate closed clean every night and opened clean every morning, and the sound of it, the smooth swing, the clean seat, was a sound Cora had not known she was waiting to hear until she heard it. She stood in the courtyard on the morning of the first real snow, watching it fall on Vethara's stones, and Emmerich came and stood beside her. They were not standing at the distance of a warlord and a prisoner. They had not been standing at that distance for some time. When exactly the distance had changed, she could not have said. It had happened the way foundation water happened, finding a crack and following it gradually until the thing it was undermining had shifted. Just half an inch, just enough. The south wing fireplace, she said. Working, he said. I tested it last night. The crack was only in the facing, not the flue. Good. Snow fell. The city was quiet under it in the way cities were quiet under snow. Not silent but muffled, the edges of things softened. Emmerich, she said. Cora, he said. It was the first time she had used his name without the designation of prisoner before it. It was the first time I had used her name at all. Neither of them commented on this. I want to ask you something, she said. Ask. When you came here, when Draven brought you, you weren't afraid. I was frightened, he said. I told you, but not afraid. There's a difference. She looked at the snow on the gate, the clean line of it against the iron bands. Most people brought before me are afraid. You were. She searched for it. Assessing. I didn't know what you were going to do, he said. Being afraid before you know the thing seems wasteful. Better to understand the situation first and be afraid of the right things. And were you? Afraid of the right things? He was quiet for a moment. I was afraid you'd send me away before I finished the gate, he said. Cora turned to look at him. He was looking at the gate, the snow on it, the clean arc of its swing. That's what you were afraid of. Among other things, he said. Eventually, the snow fell between them. She could see his breath in the cold air and her own, separate and then briefly together when the wind shifted. I'm not sending you away, she said. I know, he said. I'm asking you to stay. He turned from the gate and looked at her. The full look, the one that did not slide off anything. Gold brown eyes, steady, the look of a man who had been assessing this particular situation for 2 months and had reached a conclusion he was willing to speak. "Among my people," he said, and then stopped and almost smiled. "I don't have a formal phrase for this. We're not ceremonial about these things." "What are your people?" she said. "Carpenters," he said. "We express things by what we build." Cora looked at the gate, at the beam invisible from here but present in the hall beyond, at the counting house roof, at the tower still leaning but leaning less, at the south wing, its windows whole, its fireplace drawing clean. "Then you've already said it," she said, his face, the change in it. The thing that opened when something careful closes. She had seen it once or twice at the edge of moments and never straight on, and now she saw it straight on, in the snow, with the gate behind him that he had made work. "I have," he said. "Yes." She reached out. Not the reach of command. She had 400 people under her command and knew every shade of that reach. This was different. This was the reach of a woman who had been in motion for 6 years and had stopped, and was finding out what stopping meant. Her hand, large and scarred from 2 decades of war, found his hand, large and scarred from 2 decades of work. Different scars, different shapes, the same intention. "The East Hall," she said after a while. "The floor, the roots have lifted 3 of the flagstones." "I noticed," he said. In spring, he agreed. The snow fell on Vethera, on its repaired gate and its pinned beam and its stabilized tower and its 8 habitable rooms, on the city that had been abandoned for 40 years, and was being slowly and practically and without ceremony made into something that intended to stay. Emmeric's hand was warm in hers. She did not let go. In spring, a delegation arrived from the Southern Trade Consortium, seeking negotiation. They found the gate open and working, which they had not expected. They found the great hall in order. They found the Warlord of Vethara at the long table with her maps, and beside her, slightly to the left and occupied with a piece of wood and a small knife, a human man with a carpenter's hands, who did not look up when they entered. The delegation's head spoke the formal opening of negotiation. He made several points about territorial claims and trade routes, and the consortium's patience. Cora listened. She responded with precision. What she would concede, what she would not, what the terms of the agreement she was prepared to sign actually were, and the consequences of the consortium declining them. The delegation's head, who had expected either capitulation or posturing, got neither. He got a warlord who knew exactly what she wanted and had calculated exactly what she could offer, and had no interest in the performance of either weakness or threat. After a long negotiation, he agreed to her terms. When the delegation had gone to their guest quarters, Cora sat back in the high seat and let the tiredness come. Emmerich looked up from the wood. The East terms? Accepted. The passage rights? Granted on our schedule, not theirs. He nodded. And the storage levy? They'll be unhappy about it for a year and then accept it as the cost of the route. He turned the wood over. Good. She looked at him. You were listening. I always listen, he said. I just don't always have anything useful to add. You didn't add anything today. No, he said. You didn't need anything added. Cora looked at her maps. The routes, the territories, the agreements being built the way buildings were built. Foundation first, then walls, then the roof that made it real. Emmerich, she said. Cora, the delegation head asked Dravan before the negotiation who the human in the hall was. She watched his face. Dravan told him you were the warlord's builder. Something in Emmerich's face, the quiet thing again, the satisfaction of something being as it should be. Is that accurate? She said. He set the wood down. He looked at her with the full attention, the steady eyes, the expression of a man who had assessed this situation carefully and was prepared to speak his conclusion. It's accurate, he said. Yes. Outside, the spring was arriving in the high country, not gradually, all at once, the decision of a door opening. The city of Vethara woke under it, its gate working, its tower standing, its rooms inhabited, its floors being, slowly and carefully, and with great attention to the hidden joints, made to hold. And the East Hall floor took most of the spring. 3 flagstones had heaved. Emmerich had been right about the roots, which had been wrong about where they were going, and had gone there anyway with the commitment of things that had 40 years of practice. He took the stones up one at a time, cut back the roots, relaid the bed, reset the stones. Breck worked beside him. Breck worked beside him on most things now, had been working beside him since the gate, had somewhere in the months between become the thing that Emmerich had identified on the 3rd day of their acquaintance. A person who had grown up building things and then stopped and was, carefully and without announcement, starting again. Dravan had noted to Cora, in the way Dravan noted things, that Breck had put in a formal request to be designated building crew rather than combat rotation. Cora had approved the request. Dravan had not said anything else about it. He had, however, the expression of a man whose warlord was making decisions she would not have made 2 years ago, and who found this, on balance, an improvement. The summer brought 2 things. The Trade Consortium's first supply caravan through the new arrangement, which arrived on schedule and departed on schedule, and left behind both goods and the grudging recognition that Cora's terms had been reasonable, and a messenger from the Eastern clans with a request that Cora attend a gathering of war leaders. She did not want to attend. This was new. For 23 years, the gathering of war leaders had been the thing she oriented toward, the room where decisions were made, where her voice and her reputation and the weight of her victories counted for something. She had traveled to 6 such gatherings and had never once not wanted to go. She sat with the messenger's letter in the great hall and thought about why. Emmerich was across the hall. He was building a shelf. She had mentioned once that the records room had no storage that worked, and he had appeared 3 days later with lumber and a plan. He was fitting the joints now, the particular focused attention of someone making something that needed to be right. She looked at him. He looked up. "You're thinking about something difficult," he said. "Not a question. Gathering of war leaders. A month from now, 3 weeks of travel each way." He set down the chisel. "Do you need to go?" "I should go. There are decisions being made that affect this territory. My absence is a statement." "What statement?" "That I'm not engaged. That Vethara is a retreat, not a position." He was quiet for a moment. "Is it a retreat?" Cora looked at her hands. The calluses from 30 years of weapons, the scar at the base of her thumb from a fight in a different country, in a different decade. "No," she said. "It's a position I chose." "That's different." "Then go and say so," Emmerich said, "in the room where it needs to be said. You make it sound simple." "It is simple, not easy." "Simple." He picked up the chisel again. "The joints won't hold themselves while you're gone." Cora almost laughed. It was not the almost of something suppressed. It was the almost of something that arrived too quickly to fully form. "Is that a reason to stay?" "No," he said. "The joints will hold. I'll pin them before you leave." She looked at him. He was fitting the shelf board now, checking the level, making the small sounds. "I'll be gone 7 weeks," she said, "minimum." "I know. There's the north drainage to address before autumn." "I know, and the stable roof." "Cora," he said. She stopped. "I'll be here when you come back," he said. Without drama, without performance, the flat certainty of a fact being stated. "The drainage, the stable roof, the 3 window frames in the west passage that I haven't mentioned yet, because I was waiting for the right moment. All of it will be here. I will be here." He checked the level again. "Go to your gathering. Say the thing that needs to be said. Come back." She was quiet for a long time. "Among my people," she said, "there is a tradition. Before a war leader goes to battle or council, someone important to them speaks a word over their weapons. It's old. Most people don't do it anymore." Emmerich set down the level and turned to look at her. "What does the word say?" "It says, 'I will be here.' It says, 'Come back to me.' It says the things that are true but too large for ordinary speech." She looked at him. "It's spoken over the weapons, because the weapons are the part of the leader that goes into danger, and the word is meant to follow them." He crossed the hall. He stopped in front of her. He was shorter than her. She was taller than most people, and he was medium height, and the difference between them was not uncomfortable. It was simply a fact of their respective existences that they had arranged around without discussion. He held out his hand. She looked at it. Then she put her weapons belt on the table between them, her sword, her knife, the short blade she wore at the small of her back. He put his hand flat on the sword's hilt. His eyes came up to hers. He did not speak a word in her language because he did not know her language's old forms. He spoke in his own, plain, without ceremony, the language of a carpenter who expressed things by what he built. "I'll be here," he said. "Come back." Cora put her hand over his on the hilt. The hall was quiet. Outside, Vethara went about its business. Breck in the courtyard with 2 other soldiers, working on the drainage plan. Yenna at the gate. The warband in its daily rhythm, the city in its slow recovery. "The shelf," she said. "It'll be done by morning," he said. "And the north drainage and the stable roof." "Before the first frost," he said. "I promise." She picked up the sword. He stepped back. She buckled the belt and looked at the shelf, half built, the joints fitted, waiting for the pins. 7 weeks, she said. 7 weeks, he agreed. She went to arrange the travel. She came back in 6. She came back in 6 because the gathering had resolved faster than expected. Not because the decisions were simpler, but because she had said the thing that needed to be said in the room where it needed to be said. And it had cut through the usual geometry of war leader politics with the efficiency of someone who had been practicing practicality for 23 years and had recently been reminded by a carpenter that accuracy and comfort were different things, and accuracy was more useful. She rode through Vethara's gate at midday on a Tuesday. The gate opened clean, the mechanism engaged without sound. She rode through, and the gate closed behind her, and she sat on her horse in the courtyard and looked at what 6 weeks had done. The north drainage was finished. She could see where the channel ran. New stone, clean joins, sloping correctly. The stable roof was new timber, tight against the autumn sky. The west passage had 4 new window frames, which she counted twice because she had only known about 3 of them. Breck was in the courtyard. He saw her and straightened and then relaxed. The relaxation of someone who had stopped performing formality some time ago without noticing. The stable roof held through the first cold rain, he said. No leaks. Good, Cora said. Where is he? Breck tilted his head toward the south wing. She left her horse with the stable and walked to the south wing, through the door she had had installed in the spring, down the corridor with its 4 working rooms, to the room at the end which she had told Emmerich 6 months ago she might use as a private study if the chimney was ever fixed, which the chimney now was. He was on a ladder. The room was acquiring bookshelves, which she had not asked for and which were, she could see, going to be exactly right. The 4th shelf from the left, he said, without looking down. It needs to be a hand's width lower than I've marked it, or the proportion will be wrong. You're measuring my room, Cora said. I'm measuring your study, he said. The proportion matters for a room people think in. She looked at the shelves, at the window, fixed, looking out over the courtyard, at the fireplace, clean-lined, the crack gone from the chimney breast, at the room which had been open to the sky 8 months ago, and was now, quietly and certainly, a place where a person could be. 6 weeks, Emmerich said. He came down the ladder, rain damp still on his shoulders from whatever he'd been doing before this. The same hands, the same face, the same lines at the corners of the eyes, the same scar along the jaw. 6 weeks, she confirmed. He looked at her. The gathering resolved. Our territory is recognized. The eastern trade route is protected. The consortium agreement holds. She looked at the shelves. The 4th shelf. A hand's width lower, he said. Fix it before dinner, she said. I want to see the room finished. He almost smiled. It was more than almost. It was the thing itself, brief and real, the expression of a man who has been doing the work and has come to the part where the work is done and it is as it should be. Before dinner, he said. Cora put her hand on the doorframe. Old stone, Vethara's stone, 40 years of abandonment in it, and 8 months of habitation beginning to overwrite that history with something new. Emmerich, she said. Cora. The east wing, she said. The long building at the back of the square. I looked at it when I rode in. He tilted his head. It could be a workshop, she said, with enough light. The south-facing wall has 3 collapsed window openings, he said. I looked at it in the spring. The wall is sound. The windows could be rebuilt. He looked at the door frame, at her hand on it. It would take most of the winter. Winter is long here, she said. I know, he said. I've been here for one. She looked at him. He looked at her. Outside, Vethara settled into its afternoon, its gate working, its towers standing, its rooms inhabited, its drainage running clean into the autumn ground. Stay, she said. Not the practical word, not the useful word. The real one, the one underneath. He stepped forward. He put his hand over hers on the doorframe. Different scars, same stone. I'm already staying, he said. I thought that was established. I wanted to say it plainly, she said, the way you say things. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, plainly, in the language of a man who expressed things by what he built. So am I. Outside, the first of the autumn leaves came down on Vethara's courtyard. The gate stood open in the afternoon light, clean on its hinges, ready to close when evening came and open again when morning did. It would do this for a very long time.